Hello, this is Greg Berg with the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation District office in Waite Park, giving you the weekly conservation update. In the water world, there's a lot of initiatives going on to protect our water resources, and a lot of terms and initiatives going on that take place that I want to talk to you about today. One is what's called a RAPS, or Watershed Restoration and Protection Strategy. This involves some steps that go into things to protect our water resources and to determine where we're at with things. So the first step in that process is to monitor water bodies and collect data. That's a 2-year intensive monitoring program of lakes and streams. That monitoring and assessment report and stressor identification report talks about the watershed's biota, which is fish and bugs, and you can learn more about the monitoring itself and what is sampled. After that is done, then the assessment of the data is determined, and you determine whether or not water resources meet water quality standards and designated uses. Identify waters that do not meet water quality standards and list them as impaired waters, and I'll talk a little bit about what impaired waters are here in just a little bit. And also identify waters that should be protected. So that means that they do not have any issues at this time, and identify stressors affecting aquatic life in streams. Next step is develop strategies that restore and protect watersheds' water bodies. So that RAPS report, that Watershed Restoration and Protection Strategy report, and TMDL, Total Maximum Daily Loads, are completed. I'll talk about what that means in just a little bit as well. Then step 4 is conduct restoration and protection projects in the watershed. Those restoration and protection projects are implemented by local units of government, like the Soil and Water Conservation District that I work for and that we're talking about right now. So, intensive watershed monitoring, what is that? So that's looking at natural stream reaches, and the sites are placed near road crossings, usually at least 1 mile from large bodies of water such as lakes, wetlands, and rivers. They're chosen in that fashion to avoid collection of fish species that inhabit larger bodies of water because they're not a good indication of what the health of the stream is. Number of sites per watershed increases as the size of the watershed increases, and biological, water chemistry, and fish contaminant indicators are monitored to determine the condition of these watersheds. So biological monitoring or sampling, what is that? That's fish and invertebrate or bugs. They determine aquatic life use support, so whether or not the fish and the bugs can live based on the quality. Water chemistry sampling is just what it says. It's sampled the water to see how clean or clear or what nutrients are in it. So it's sampled 10 times throughout the summer, and sampling can vary, but it includes any or all of these: nitrates, ammonia, dissolved oxygen, pH, conductivity, temperature, total phosphorus, Kaldol nitrogen, chlorides, sulfates, calcium, magnesium, total suspended solids, also called TSS, total volatile solids, E. coli, chlorophyll A, phytogen, and transparency data. E. coli can indicate and assess a stream for aquatic recreation, dissolved oxygen, transparency, and suspended solids data makes it possible to assess whether or not a stream is impaired for aquatic life. Fish contaminant sampling does an analysis of contaminants of mercury and PCBs. So, MPCA does, that's Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, does a watershed approach to restoring and protecting Minnesota rivers and lakes. There's 80 major watersheds that have this in Minnesota, throughout Minnesota, and that intensive watershed monitoring is conducted in these watersheds every 10 years. That evaluates conditions, establishes priorities, goals for improvement, takes actions and restores and protects water quality. So, how do you know if a water body is impaired? One or more water quality standards from the Minnesota Water Quality Standards list in lakes, rivers, streams, and wetlands, and it determines how much of a pollutant, such as bacteria or nutrients, can be in a water, whether or not it's drinkable, swimmable, fishable, or usable in other designated ways, called beneficial uses. Waters that do not meet water quality standard violations are impaired. 40% of Minnesota lakes and streams are impaired. So this is important. Under the Federal Clean Water Act, the MPCA is to assess all waters of the state to determine if they meet water quality standards, create a list of waters that do not meet the standards, and set pollution reduction goals needed to restore impaired waters, called total maximum daily loads. We talked about that a little bit before, and I'll get into that next. So TMDLs, total maximum daily loads, is the maximum amount of a pollutant a water body can receive without violating those water quality standards, and an allocation of the amount to the pollutant sources. So whatever that source might be that we listed off before. Once a body of water is added to the Minnesota Impaired Water List, TMDL must be developed. And then after the impaired waters are listed, the MPCA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, organizes them into TMDL projects. Right now, currently, we have quite a few of those in the county, and some of them are being worked on right now. The other planning thing that I want to talk to you about is what's called a One Watershed One plan. That is to align local water planning on a major watershed boundary with state strategies towards prioritized, targeted, and measurable implementation plans. The guiding principles for those are future water plans and existing water plans are combined, so local knowledge and other studies and plan documents, including those RAPs and TMDLs, are used to establish timelines, milestones, cost estimates, and largest threats to those watersheds, and then determine environmental benefits unique to the watershed. One Watershed One plans are done to utilize existing structures of counties, SWCDs, watershed districts, etc., to govern those plans and to carry them out. One Watershed One plans use the state's delineated major watersheds. So it's not changing any boundaries, it's just using those existing watersheds. And One Watershed One plan must involve a broad range of stakeholders to ensure an integrated approach. That even means landowners or volunteers are involved, such as you out there listening. One Watershed One plan implementation will be accomplished through formal agreements of local governments. So they need to work together, and if it's across county lines, agree on what priorities there are. Now, the North Fork Crow River watershed is just completing a One Watershed One plan. They were one of the first in the state to jump into this. The Sauk River Watershed District locally is just starting a One Watershed One plan. So if you have interest, you can look up the North Fork One Watershed One plan, or you can get involved with the planning process of the Sauk River Watershed One plan. I hope that wasn't too much for you. I just wanted to throw out some of those watershed, water words, and things that get thrown around as far as initiatives and planning. Again, this is Greg Berg with the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation District, giving you the weekly conservation update. Have a great day.